Hello, good afternoon to everybody. We are here today with Tina. Hello, Tina, how are you?
Hi, thank you so much. I'm very well. Thank you for having me.
Thank you to be here. So today with Tina Holton, we will see 5 key strategies companies should use to innovate for success in the new decade. So during 45 minutes, she will present this, and you can ask questions directly on our Telegram group. It's Open Expo Europe Telegram group. It just you have the link. Just write down. Okay, so you can enter. If you have any question, you can let it written or by voice, and we will put it directly. So thank you very much to be here this afternoon with us, and or in this morning if you are in US, and hope you will enjoy the presentation. Let's go on, Tina.
Right. Thank you so much again for having me at Open Expo Europe, and it's nice to be back again. So this afternoon, I wanted to share with you 5 key strategies that every business really should use with regards to innovation for greater success in this new decade. We are streaming globally through the Open Expo platform and also through Facebook Live or my personal live. So any questions you have, feel free to put that in there. So the key takeouts for this afternoon, really, four main key takeouts. Number one would be helping you to best identify, opportunities for collaboration. The second takeout would be how you can leverage technology when it comes to innovation for success. And then, of course, the fourth takeout is how do you even begin innovation for a cause? Outside of the initial desire with which you started business, and especially in this current climate or crisis, if you will, that we all are in globally, every single corner of the world. Innovating for a cause greater than yourself is always going to be a winner. Then, of course, the fourth key takeout is how do you share your vision as a business, as a company, as an entrepreneur, so that your team can buy in, your network can buy in, investors can buy in, and all the necessary stakeholders will be able to buy in as well. So those are the 4 key takeouts that I want you to be able to take out of this afternoon session. I'm going to be with you for half an hour, and then we would have a Q&A session as well. So any questions that come along as I'm sharing this, feel free to put it in the Telegram group as announced, or put on the platform, and it would be read out to me. If you're on Facebook, then please put in the comment section as well, and I will be able to answer those as well. So the first strategy that every business, every entrepreneur, every company, irrespective of where you are, needs to be utilizing when it comes to innovation for success is really collaboration and co-creating, which is now the new norm. The second strategy is innovating for a greater cause. How do you tap into that pool? The third strategy is leveraging technology for acceleration and outcome-driven innovation. The fourth strategy is really thinking from the top, right? And I will explain a bit more what I mean by thinking from the top. And then, of course, the fifth strategy is sharing the vision and the risk that comes with innovation for success in the current decade in which we're in. So I want to take a brief moment for those of you who don't know me, just to share a little bit about myself. So I'm a qualified and accredited global business mentor. I've won many awards. Currently in the UK, I'm recognized as one of the best business mentors for entrepreneurs in the UK 2018-2019, as well as one of the most influential business women in the United Kingdom. I'm also the vice president for the Well Business Angels Forum, their women's committee. I sit as the vice president. I'm also the president and CEO for the Chamber for Africa Diaspora Relations, which looks at how the Africa diaspora can be a single source of FDI for the continent of Africa, amongst other things. I am also the president for Nations of Women, which is a women's network that looks to accelerate, scale, and amplify women entrepreneurs around the world. And I have been an entrepreneur myself for 2 decades at the moment, excluding those parts when I was much, much younger and, testing my feet in the entrepreneurial world. So that's just a little bit about me. I do believe that through my experience and expertise, I will be able to help you be able to innovate for success in this new decade, but particularly looking at the current state of economy, if you will, that every single nation is feeling at the moment. So the first thing I talked about is collaboration. I believe that for a company to successfully innovate, they really need to think about collaboration as the new norm, if you will. Collaboration and co-creating, if you will. What do I mean by that? Now, when you're collaborating or co-creating, essentially, your team becomes part of the process, right? You collaborate with your team, you allow your team to think, you allow your team to, take ownership of ideas, you allow your network, whether it's customers in this regard, to actually share and help you identify what actually do they need as far as a service, for example, or a product. If you're a service provider or a product provider, what do your customers really truly need, right? And then be able to bring them in as part of the forum, if you will, that speaks to how you innovate, how you actually, what do you call it, bring the service from ideation all the way through to market for them, to collaborate and co-create with your customers, with your team, is absolutely a great combination, and will absolutely without a doubt lead to greater success for you as a company. Now, I have also put down academic institutions, because why academic institutions? Because not only are they, providing like training, tuition, if you will, for, the next generation or students who are going to graduate and maybe come into industry, but actually, if you think about it, they would already have infrastructure, they would have systems in place that you can utilize, whether it's a laboratory or the framework. They would almost every academic institution would have the necessary framework, protocols, and infrastructure that you would need as far as innovation is concerned. And most of the time, entrepreneurs and companies sort of overlook the huge asset that an academic institution can become as far as a collaborative partner. So if you are thinking about innovation, and I think every single business that you can think of, irrespective of where they are in the world at the moment, are looking and they're being forced to actually change the business module, right? From how they've done business in the past, like even 3 weeks, 4 weeks, right? Or 8 weeks back, how businesses did business just 3 weeks ago is all changed. And so you need to be able to innovate. Otherwise, you're going to be left behind. We can think of Kodak, right? Kodak used to have a very, very big market share. And then what happened? They didn't innovate, and therefore they lost part of the market. If you think BlackBerry, right, and a few many other organizations or companies other that failed to innovate faster, lost market share. And then another, company came in and took a greater share. So first strategy, when you're thinking about innovation for greater success, certainly in this next decade that we're in, you need to identify your best partners for collaboration and co-creating. And the three that I highly recommend is your team, is your network, which is your customers or your customer base, or anybody else that actually is part of your team, if you will, or part of your network, which could also include like your investors, for example. and all other stakeholders, right? And also academic institutions. Don't overlook academic institutions because they have the system, infrastructure, and sometimes even protocols that you already need in place in order to innovate for success. The second strategy that you want to think about and really focus on is innovation for a cause. Now we know that like no government, right? And I work with many governments around the world. No single government could have planned and been adequately prepared for the times in which we're in, which means that even governments are having to innovate, governments are having to change the way they're working. If you take the UK government, our tax system, they were beginning to move to a digital platform. There were plans in place to move to a digital platform, this year, right? April 6th is the financial year, beginning of the fiscal year, and now they've had to almost like accelerate the rate at which all those plans were in place. Now I know that many other governments are facing the same situation, but the companies or entrepreneurs that are going to win are the ones that are nimble enough. What do I mean by that? Nimble enough to actually realize that they need to go step outside of the original desire to, to start the business. We know that what you call it, Dyson, for example, the original idea, desire was to create, vacuum cleaners. But now with the current epidemic that's going on, they're changing, their business, what you call it, the tools, the what you call it, workshops, everything, and changing that to actually innovate and to produce what you call it, ventilators, right? So when you're a company that you can quickly adapt to maybe like macro economics forces, because sometimes it's macroeconomics that will control and dictate how your business should innovate. So if you've built it flexible enough to be able to quickly switch, but not necessarily where you hit a place like this, I think even now, more so than ever, anybody thinking about starting a business or going into entrepreneurship, you want to be able to, from the word go, think how can my business, right, go or expand beyond myself? How can my business expand beyond my little community, right? How can I solve global issues? How can I create a business that impacts the nations, impacts the world? Because if your business can solve global issues and can create greater impact, guess what? It ultimately leads to longevity. Your business will go for a long time. And also, if your business is able to innovate and what do you call it, produce or tap into a greater cause beyond the normal status quo, then you obviously will have greater rewards. Greater rewards means higher sales. For example, I know that because Dyson have quickly what do you call it, innovated and manufacturing ventilators, guess what? They're going to take more, customers when all of this is over, because people are going to think actually they love the fact that they were able to switch. There is a distiller, I think in Scotland or Edinburgh, somewhere in the United Kingdom, where they've, also changed. It's like we can't, if we can't produce beer and gin and alcohol, all those, we're going to change we're going to adapt our tools, our workshop, our platform or infrastructure, and we're going to manufacture hand sanitizers because we know that it is such a crucial product right now. Guess what? When this is over, for the next 10 years, they're going to be ahead of their competitors because they showed that they were able to actually innovate for a cause beyond the original plan, which was distillery, which was vacuum cleaners, for example. The same with BMW and Formula One and all of those. They're all quickly innovating and adapting. Yesterday I was watching on the news, I think there's a company in Canada which again they're changing their their product line, everything, and again manufacturing what do you call it, ventilators, respiratory equipment for their hospitals. So I strongly recommend that if you're a company, you want to think about innovating for a greater cause. And if you're thinking, okay, where do I begin, how do I think about what cause I want to innovate for, or how can I, where to begin? Just look at the UN global goals, right? The UN global goals, there's 17 global big issues that your business should be able to speak to, from education to clean water to greener energy to what do you call it, gosh, technology, every single thing you can possibly think about. Go to, or just search the UN global goals, the 17 global goals. You would be able to find something. And I'm not saying you need to innovate, and say, look, I'm going to, produce the world's greenest energy, for example. But each of the global 17 goals have been broken down into set of KPIs, key performance indicators, systems, smaller targets and goals that you can just pick one of those, where your business or your company is actually working to create impact in one way or the other. That is way beyond what the original thinking or the original plan for starting the business was. And I believe that if your business is able to innovate for a greater cause, to create impact, to touch lives, to change communities, nations, you're not just solving global issues, but you're going to have longevity, you're going to have reward, which is greater market share, if you will, because people love companies that solve meaningful problems. So that's number 2. Number 3 is technology, right? You have to have a technology strategy. And we all know that technology underpins how quickly you can move, how quickly you can access, and how quickly you can scale, right? So you want to leverage technology for acceleration, which is the speed of implementation. And we know that from like Dyson, right? They're leveraging the technology to be able to quickly implement, and within a week manufacturing ventilators. The same with the distillery, they quickly being able to adapt and leveraging technology, right? And technology also creates accessibility and scale. Right now, we know that with the COVID-19, these companies, right, they have a moral duty towards their team members or their employees, right? But how are they being able to innovate? By using technology. Accessibility means that maybe the team don't all have to physically come to the office or come to the workshop. They could be at home, like I'm at home right now and I'm talking to you right now, leveraging technology. And it also means that they can scale, right? I think Dyson, something like 10,000 ventilators or 1,000 ventilators, something like that in a day or an hour, right? So again, you have to have a very solid strategy on technology. What is the best technology that you can utilize? Again, having the right technology means that you can identify what do you call it, any inefficiencies that could be present in your business or in your company. It can also help you to identify and leverage effectiveness and efficiency. So there is inefficiencies that you can identify versus efficiencies that you can multiply, right? And also because staff don't necessarily all have to come to the office, it brings a sense of inclusivity, as in, you know what, I may not be able to come to the office, but I can still contribute to, I can still be, what do you call it, part of a meaningful project or program or product that is coming to the market. And when you are able to create an environment of inclusivity where your people know that, they're wanted, they matter, their voice is important, what they have to contribute is important and valued by the company, you know what, you get the best out of them. So your strategy, number 3 strategy, is a technology strategy, identifying what technology you need, and that technology needs to be able to create acceleration, speed of implementation, identify effectiveness, efficiencies, and inefficiencies that needs to be dealt with, and also to bring inclusivity for your team so that they can take ownership of their contribution towards the innovation that is happening. Number 4 is think from the top, right? Think from the top. To innovate, you need to think from the top. Any company that the CEO doesn't prioritize like innovation is going to be left behind the times, right? So if you think about a company that wants to innovate, that wants to be ahead of the curve, right? It needs to be a priority. But how does it become a priority? It means that it needs to be important to the company, maybe the managers, the directors, the CEO. It needs to be important to them enough for them to actually put that as a strategy and say, you know what, actually, we're going to bring our teams together and we're going to change the way things are at the moment. Again, I've shared about with the coronavirus, every single company in every single industry is having to adapt and change its business model and how they operate, right? Now, a very good example is Starbucks, right? Howard flew in when he realized that Starbucks had lost its way and that it was losing market share. You know what he did? He flew in every single manager in the world to come together and to be part of the thought process, the decision-making process in redesigning the cafe experience, right? And that is what made Starbucks be able to regain market share and now is what it is, right? A highly successful company. You'd think, well, they just a coffee shop or sell coffee, but I mean, my goodness, the level of innovation or innovative ideas that they constantly are putting out there means that the experience is something that people feel actually is valuable enough for them to spend, let's say £6 or £7 or $7 or whatever it is on the coffee, right? Again, if you think about a company like Google, allows its companies one day every single week for them to think about new ideas. So again, innovation is a priority right from the top. So if you're going to be successful in this new decade, then as a business owner, as a company manager or director, innovation needs to become a priority. It needs to be one of the things that is at the top of your mind. And even in your P&L, it needs to have its own, it needs to feature as a line item that you then speak to and plan and think through to make sure that every single team member embraces it and understands why it is important. Now, the fifth and final, strategy is vision. Vision. Now, every single vision attached to it is risk, right? And we know that for lack of vision, people perish. And so if you're a company and you want to be successful in this new decade, especially in the next 9 months of this year, you need to be able to share the vision in your communication to your team, in your communication to your customers, in your communication to your stakeholders, maybe your investors, or anybody that is part of your ecosystem, right? You need to be able to communicate the vision to them in your marketing, in your communication. And also to be able to share communicate the risk, right? Because the truth is, you can have a vision, you can't innovate outside of risk. Every single innovation for a product or a service comes with associated risk. That as well needs to be on the P&L as well. Now, if you think about Steve Jobs, before he launched the Think Differently campaign, right? You know what he did? He commissioned a video, and you can Google this. It's called The Crazy Ones. And in the video, he showed Einstein, Edison, Muhammad Ali, Richard Branson, and others that he called, the troublemakers, right? And in the video, it was showing how they were actually doing things that was changing the world. And through that video that he commissioned, he was able to communicate to the entirety of all of Apple about the vision in terms of the new track, the new path that we're going on, but also the fact that, there were going to be risks, but it was going to be okay. Because if you watch or if you look at the life of Muhammad Ali, Einstein, Edison, Richard Branson, they all took massive, massive, massive risks, right? But in the way that he communicated it through the Crazy Ones video, it was okay. It made it easy for the team to accept that actually, yes, we want to innovate, we want to be ahead of the curve, we want to be top of, our game. And yes, there's going to be risk, but bring it on. We're ready, right? We can do this. So again, as a key strategy, you need to adopt a communication style that clearly communicates what the vision is, but in the same process, be able to communicate what the risks are. But you're communicating that authentically so that your team and your stakeholders in your entire ecosystem can buy into the vision. And ultimately, when they buy into the vision, remember we talked about, then it brings what do you call it, impact. It creates a longevity and reward, right? Which means you make more revenue. So everything therefore feeds back into the ultimate, which is why you innovate. You innovate so that you can increase your revenue, right? You innovate so that you can increase your market share, right? And to innovate, you obviously, like I've shared at the beginning, is it needs to be tied into cause to create greater impact, create longevity, reward, which is the money. You leverage technology for acceleration, for accessibility and scale, inclusivity. Think Google, think Starbucks, bring your team in, let them own, right? Take ownership for the thinking. And most importantly is communicate the vision and communicate the risk to your entire ecosystem so that you will then be able to achieve the ultimate reason, which is greater market share, more money, and more money means that you can grow, you can bring more people in, you can make more, difference to more people. So it keeps that cycle going where you're what do you call it, hiring more people, you're producing more, you're being productive, you're creating more impact, more rewards. It keeps going and going and going and going and going. So that's what I wanted to share with you as business owners, as companies, particularly for the next 9 months till the end of 2020, is that you all want to collaborate and co-create in a bit to innovate for a greater cause outside of just yourself and your desire to be in business. Leverage technology for speed, for scale, for acceleration, think from the top, make it a priority. But as you make it a priority, communicate the vision, share the risk, and let your team be a part of the process. So that brings me to the end of my share. And I'm going to pause and take any questions that you may have. If you have any questions, just let me know in the comment section and I'll be happy to answer them.
Okay, we have the first question from James.
Yes.
In the point number 3 about technologies, what do you think about software as a service to innovate in a company?
Okay, so SAS. Okay,
Yeah,
right.
so
So the question for those on Facebook is that when you're thinking about leveraging technology for innovation, what do I think about software as a service for innovation? Now we know that if we take software as a service, it just ultimately is that is the product, or well, I guess I could use the word service. The service that company would be providing its product is essentially that SAS. So yes, in order to innovate, you may well have to leverage other technologies, such as maybe communication systems, such as developing actual prototype or developing demos, if you will. They all require separate technologies outside of your own, what do you call it, product or your own service or your own track, if you will. And therefore, again, it comes back to the collaboration is, if you're innovating, yes, what actually do your customers need? Yes, you're providing software as a service, but what do they really, really need? If you understand from your companies and from your customers what they need, then it will help you to be much more clearer in terms of what actual technologies do you need in order to even get started, in order to prototype, to test, and then be able to launch into the market.
okay, and the second one from Alberto. Will it be a great revolution for the new decade to have started in with a crisis as strong as that the coronavirus?
I absolutely, I think so that the year starting with the crisis in which we're in would actually lead to greater innovation. If you think about the last time that there was almost like a global crisis, which I'm referring to, the last recession, 2018, 2019, which is just, we've just gone past the 10-year mark. Now, the good thing is obviously now most economies were healthy, if you will, before this started. But for the purposes of, technology, yes, if you think Uber and Airbnb and all of those, they all came out of that period, if you will, of great financial crisis, if you will. And so I believe that definitely this season which we're in with the coronavirus is going to actually see a surge in some incredible innovation that we probably may not have necessarily thought about, but it's going to accelerate all those innovation that would be what do you call it, meaningful in helping to reduce the level of casualties, if you will, from the effect of the coronavirus. And I'm particularly excited looking at what is coming and the level of innovation coming out of Africa at the moment. Of all around the coronavirus. So I think in some ways it's a blessing in disguise. Of course, the effect where people are losing their life is not fun. It's not nice for anyone. But I think that it's going to really allow all entrepreneurs all over the world. I mean, every single business is innovating right now in terms of how they do business, with their customers. But I think the biggest winners will be those that are in the med tech or health tech, as well as, well, it used to be fintech before, beginning of the year, but now I think medical and telehealth would be at the forefront of all of this.
Okay, thank you. For the moment, there is no more question. I don't know if someone want to ask something else here, or maybe from your Facebook Live.
Yes. So someone was sharing about like Louis Vuitton is making hand sanitizers and outfits for the current situation, which is wearable technology. So the purpose is aligned with a sense of fashion. And someone is asking, is technology really the same as innovation? Whenever we hear of the latest technology recently put on the market or invented by brilliant scientists and techies, we immediately think of innovation. Can it be clarified? So innovation is not technology. You leverage technology to innovate. Innovation is essentially being able to do something that originally exists, but in a much more efficient way. So if you think about like Uber, right? Uber, there already was like mini cabs, there were taxis, that's existed in almost every country that you can possibly think of. But then we didn't have, sometimes you'd call a taxi and you don't know where they are, and it's challenging. Or sometimes for example, you want, your child or your teenage child to go somewhere, you arrive in a different company, all of those, right? And so what Uber did was, it's the same thing as taxi, but leveraging technology, which is the use of the mobile application, means that you, the consumer, you can call a taxi, you know what is the number plate, the taxi knows exactly where you're standing for safety purposes. You can send that to your family or your boss or whatever it is, and they know where you are. They can track exactly where you are. If you think about Airbnb, yes, there's always been hotels. There's always been what they call a bed and breakfast, right? But what Airbnb did was utilize technology, which means that I can sit at home, put my room on, on a piece of a platform, which is technology, and somebody can book and somebody can, share the experience and all of those. So innovation is really looking at an existing, what do you call it, something that already exists, but then you're able to present it in a much more different way, a way that is more efficient, more effective, and is able to be used by people all over, where I mean scale, right? Where you're able to scale that idea, more people can benefit from that new service or product, if you will. So, yep, that's my definition of innovation versus technology. But most of the time, I think 100% of the time, you would utilize some form of technology when you are innovating. Yes.
Okay, we have another question from Rosa. Just let me check right now. Here it is. Do you think that sustainable development goals mark the main reasons why we should innovate?
So for those on Facebook, the question is, do I think that the global sustainable goals should be the reason why we should innovate? Well, it's a yes and a no. I think that, UN as an organization, as it is, again, bringing all the nations together, realizing that these were the big goals of our day in our time. Certainly for my what do you call it, in my existence, right? And therefore, how can it's basically they're they're not necessarily the reason why we should innovate, but there are very good reasons why we should innovate. Because if you think about, let me just pull this up here, 17 global goals. if you think about the goals, right? Poverty, hunger, health and well-being, quality education. I'm reading all the goals, by the way. Gender equality, clean water, sanitation, affordable clean energy, decent work and economic growth, industry, innovation, infrastructure, reduced inequalities, sustainable cities and communities, responsible communication. Now, if I just take number 8, which is decent work and economic growth. Now, this is a problem that is not just Africa. It's a problem that is here, right here in the UK. It's a problem that's in America. That's a problem that's in Spain, in what do you call it, Belgium, in the Netherlands. It's a problem every single economy that you think of, right? If you think about sustainable cities and communities, for example, it's a problem every single where. UK, we're crying out for affordable housing, and what do you call it, communities. There's homelessness all around the world, everywhere you go. So, in my opinion, these goals make a very, very good argument for why we should innovate, because I think that if we can achieve all these goals by one way or the other, I think the world will be a better place for all of us, even beyond my lifetime and your lifetime. Number 17, which I think is quite, fascinating, partnerships for the goal. Like I said, it's always, you can't innovate, you can't be successful of your own. You always need to do that, and it's always going to take partnerships to be able to succeed, whether it's your personal goal or business goal or a global goal. It always takes partnerships to be able to succeed. And I think that, for companies, when you're thinking about how your company, as part of its innovation, could tie into something that is greater than itself, then yes, the 17 global goals is a good place to look at and a good place to start.
Okay, and now we have the last question from Thomas. And the question is very quick, but explaining why he is asking this.
Yeah.
The question is: innovation is originality, and it's explaining why. Perhaps that is why you spoke about Muhammad Ali as an innovator at the age of Edison in your presentation.
Yeah. So innovation is not always originality. Not certainly not in my experience. I've mentored at least 30,000 entrepreneurs all over the world, and I can certainly say in my experience and that I've had over the last 2 decades, 20 years, innovation is not always originality. Think about Airbnb. Okay, there is some level of originality in there, but the whole concept, business idea, I actually have the business plan for both Uber and Facebook and Airbnb, and it's not 100% original. Not 100% original. It's always will start from taking an idea or an original idea that already exists and then adapting it in a way that's more efficient and able to scale, if you will. So I beg to differ. Maybe some people might say that innovation is always original, but certainly in my experience, innovation is in my experience of entrepreneurs that I've met and mentored, it hasn't always been 100% original.
Okay, I think there is no more question. Thank you very much, Tina, for your time, for sharing your knowledge and having being here today for the live stream from Open Expo Europe. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I have one last question, if I may.
Of course.
From Facebook says, please can you help identify cross-cutting things governments can do to maximize the potential for innovation, exhibits and case studies presented? Now, this is a great question. And like for 2 years, 2017 through to 2019, one of the things I was doing in Ghana was actually helping the government to understand the importance of startups, right? And startups have a great, great importance for every single economy. And reason being, a startup, the solution being created by a startup would always be much more robust in terms of solving that problem compared to when you import the solution for that problem. And if a government can understand how and why they should leverage the startups in the country to what do you call it, solve problems, or when a country is trying to innovate, I think it's going to not only bring in investment or investors, because investors always invest in entrepreneurs, right? And in startup ideas. And so that's one of the things I've been doing, is helping government to understand how they can leverage the startup ecosystem, not only as a system to solve problems in the country, but also as a system to actually bring investment into the country as well. So my answer is that government should really, when they're always thinking about solutions for problems in the economy, they should always first of all turn to the startup ecosystem. Startup, whether it's an incubator or an accelerator hub or whatever, they're always going to be solutions that are available, and be able to provide that support for the startups, because if they're successful, guess what? They will go to market. It would create revenue. It would create they would pay taxes. Investors will come to the country. They would invest, and it creates a much more successful and lucrative ecosystem. So my advice is government should always look at the startup ecosystem in their country whenever it thinks about innovation for any solution in the country before going outside of the country. So yes, thank you so much again for having me, Open Expo. I appreciate the opportunity to collaborate and support what you're doing. And I look forward to being able to do more with you over the months and over the years. And yeah, thank you again.
Thank you very much, Tina. Have a good afternoon.
Thank you. You too. Bye-bye.